with old school RuneScape and classic WoW and Season of Discovery and different like revisitations of earlier versions of MMOs and some newer MMOs coming out with like more old school design principles and sensibilities. There's been the conversation circulating around, do these games rely on nostalgia or do they have a place in the current games market? And I think it's a really interesting topic, but I feel like it doesn't have a simple answer. Um, so it's not that the audience for these games changed; it's that it grew. Uh, when you think about the kind of people that were playing these games 15, 20 years ago, they're 15 or 20 years older now, so they might be in a different place in their life than they were originally. And they grew up with a different landscape of games, a different fabric of society. And the younger people that are playing these games now, people that are in their 20s now, um, grew up with, EverQuest, World of Warcraft, Guild Wars, RuneScape. They grew up with these games ever present. They don't they don't know a world without them. So it's hard to there wasn't the gradual progress into games looking like they did um, with the more old guard of people. So I I don't I don't think that the game serves the same needs for the different groups of people, and I think that's one of the reasons that like whether or not it relies on nostalgia um, depends on who you ask more than a simple yes or no. Um, so there are some people that want to go back and play an MMO that they played years ago because they missed that time in their life, and I've heard that argument made. Like I don't miss raiding in Warcraft. You know, I miss my life being simpler. I miss having the luxury of time to be able to play, as much of the game as I want to. Um, and I I think part of it is when MMOs were new, when they were coming into the cultural zeitgeist in a big way. Gaming was a lot more niche several years ago, and it's way more accessible. Technology is more affordable. Games are more prevalent. The types of games being created is broader. So there's, somebody you can just have games on a cell phone where smartphones didn't even exist years ago, or uh, there's always been some sort of handheld, and these are it's a completely different market, obviously, for like handhelds and casual games. But what multiplayer games look like is starting to change. There's some big scope, big multiplayer games now that are being created to work on multiple platforms. Like Fortnite's not really an MMO, but one of the reasons it was so successful was because it could run on almost anything. And there's a lot of the like Chinese and Asian like gotcha games that look really great. You know, they all look like Zelda to me, but like they look beautiful, and they can run on like a tablet, a phone, you know, uh, a Zune. They can run on anything. It's kind of crazy, but they have you know, they've got the budget, both financially and technically, to be able to pull something like that off. And there's a lot of like much older games, like RuneScape, that could be converted to run easily. They're tiny, like by comparison, because they had to be when they were created. There's not a lot of voice dialogue. There's not a lot of pre-rendered cutscenes. There's not a lot of complex graphics. So uh, it's more of a, you know, would it be worth their time, or like would it be better to just scrap it, make a new version of it, or does there need to be 3 different versions of the same game? Like, how many different versions of Warcraft are, like, simultaneously running? Um, so I think, with MMOs, a big, draw of them was that they were an online meeting space, especially for people that, were isolated socially by choice or circumstance. Uh, when, like, I, I like to play on European servers when I was younger because a lot of my like friends that I knew worked during the day, and if I played on a European server, they were 6 hours ahead of me, so it was their evening when it was my afternoon, and it was a lot easier to find groups, and that worked out better for me. And then And then in a time when I played like an excessive amount of games, I played on a US server at night as well. And and that was how I divided my time between like two different groups. And I don't have that kind of time anymore. So you know, but I noticed that it was more of a social, thing for sure. You know, grades used to be a lot easier. There was a lot more built-in downtime. There was a lot more time to organically socialize. Not everybody did, obviously, but there was a lot more room to. Whereas, with group finders and fast travel teleports and lots of these like time savers conveniences, um, they're it's a lot easier to just just get on and play basically solo in a group setting, where when there was more preparation and required to even form the groups, let alone when you had to like physically ride to the dungeon with everybody in the big crowd. You kind of got the hype, and you were talking on TeamSpeak or Ventrilo or whatever, and people kind of discussing strategies between pools and stuff, and with lots of like websites and content creators devoted to talking about min maxing and strategy and everything. Uh, a lot of that is kind of it's like, oh, I would just watch the video, like there's not like it's not worth people's time individually to explain it to each other anymore. You're expected to know it, and that's fine. It does save time. It does save effort, but there's just a lot of moments that used to like form a sense of community, a sense of familiarity with people that have just been removed from games. And I don't know that it can be brought back or that it's a good thing, but I do think that newer games can have different approaches to creating a sense of community, and that's something that's probably I don't know. It's hard to say if it's going to work or not, but it doesn't rely on nostalgia. It doesn't rely on old ideas. Like well, it does, but it's it's tried and true ideas that are being re examined and introduced in a newer way. Like there's the idea of player housing. It's giving a group of players the ability to change the world in a way, like a small way that makes them feel more connected to it, right? I really liked having a town in Star Wars Galaxies because uh, it was uh, it was really fascinating to see just this open field turned into a bustling metropolis. And each building you saw there, you're like, this belongs to this person in my guild, and this belongs, and that's the robotic shop. That's the commando's house. That's the, here's the city hall, and every, we've got enough people living here that we can have a shuttle port now, and it was cool like unlocking different perks and different milestones, and it was kind of a group effort. And with the games like PAX Day, you physically gather the materials. You go down and cut trees and mine stone to build these big elaborate structures together, and everybody's limited by plots, and they have to work together if they want to build something bigger than themselves. But it's a much larger ask to get into the game if you don't already know somebody, because you have the choice of having a unreasonably difficult task ahead of yourself to try to build one like a place of your own until you have a chance to meet people, or you have to join some big anonymous guild where you're just a peon for somebody else's vision, and it doesn't feel good for your contribution to not matter in a group setting. To you know, and it's hard to say with things like that if it should work that way. You could say that like guild masters have to do a lot of work, and because of that, they should have some level of ownership of the collective work, or they should have more of a voice in the vision. But that's kind of getting into a different topic that, it interests me as well. Like, eh. But, and Ashes of Creation has the idea of these nodes where they have like cities of sorts that appear on the map. They really have like a reoccurring theme of a more dynamic living world, and I think that that's a really interesting idea to keep it fresh. But I do wonder if not having those familiar places will, like in the world, could like have you less, um, make you feel less connected because they never feel familiar. You never have, like for me, if I just hear Elwyn Forest music, I can like visualize the road out of Goldshire and winding down, and you pass the Murloc Lake, and there's the wolves, and there's the logging camp, and the Tower of Azora, and it's all like there's the mine, uh, Fargo Deep Mine, and there's the other mine over by the pond, the gold tooth. There's like the McClure farm and their neighbors, and I all of it feels like a place. You know, you remember, um, you remember these places because you've just traveled past them enough that they start to feel like somewhere in your mind. And if you have a dynamic, ever changing world, then it's like, oh, here's a copy paste town in this biome, and here's a copy paste town in that biome. So it's I don't know. I'd really like to see how it works. Um, but yeah, I think player housing is one of a way to still build a sense of community, where just wasting people's time with raids doesn't really work anymore. And there's some other systems like death penalties were really really big years ago, and it was more of like a punishing mechanic where that's yielded to a different one, which is the patch gear cycles. So a long time ago, you had a chance of dropping your gear or your gear breaking and being unusable, or different things. And now you have, if you don't play every couple of months, your gear is just invalidated. There's just a power creep, and the gear that you earned won't get you anywhere anymore. So, neither of them feel good, but they're sort of ways to keep people on a on a treadmill of playing. So I don't know that the modern system's better. It's just it's stuff that's built into the game that people don't necessarily like. I don't think anybody, well, I mean, there's probably a tiny handful of people that, for whatever reason, it motivated them in a good way that are like, yeah, bring back permadeath, bring back, you know, XP and skill loss, bring back, but, and it's fine if that's what they like. But yeah, I, I think it, that, MMOs in particular are such huge games with so many layers of different systems that I don't think any one particular element can make a game succeed or fail. Sometimes it's not even the game itself, it's the community. It's like as simple as uh, did it have a bad launch? There's games that were good, but nobody saw them because there were server issues and people like were upset that they bought this game and they can't play it, and by the time they could play it, they didn't want to come back to it or whatever. Or there's like the population death spiral that will happen in a lot of them where less people play, so less people want to play. And, where it gets around that a game is dying and new players are less inclined to invest thousands of hours, or at least hundreds of hours to try to get up to the point where they've caught up with the average player, because they don't know if they have that kind of time left with the game's life, and then hearing that discourages people. There's lots of reasons that games can fail. So it's hard to even know uh, like what makes a game successful or not. Because most people when they quit, there's a lot of overlap with people's reasons, but I mean, there's a lot of different reasons. Their life changed. It just wasn't fun anymore. Some system made the game just not vibe with them as well, uh, or or it wasn't a good price or proposition anymore. Like or sometimes it's things totally outside of the game. Like there was some business practice that they didn't agree with, or just a new game was more tempting, or y- their their friend group moved away to a different game, so they followed. Like there's a lot of reasons that people leave. Um, and I think I think the best way to answer like if the older games relied on nostalgia, like I think is if if the same game was created now, like would it be any good? Uh, no, no is the answer, because for somebody who has played games for a really long time, coming into a new game, they've kind of been through the wars, right? So they are more scrutinizing. They're more aware of potential problems. They're less willing to invest themselves. There's not that sense of exploration, sense of wonder. There's not the easy willingness to get lost in the game, to enjoy the process, to trust the development will progress in a way that they want in a timely manner. I think uh, I think that's more of it. More people have quit. Classic WoW, right? I mean, people wanted it and they left because it wasn't what they wanted. But I don't think that's because what they wanted was through nostalgia goggles. I think that like most of the fall off was either just a natural a natural thing where they missed playing the game, they played it for a while, and it's stagnant by design. Like there's not everybody wants to play classic Mr. Pandaria, right? Um so the game just okay, they miss playing Warcraft, and now it's gone again, and these things happen, or they miss playing it. They played it again, and now they want to move on with their lives, do something else. Maybe they'll play it again in another 10 years, or yeah, they didn't miss the game. They missed the community. They missed the life they had. I think these kinds of things can happen. Um, but I don't think it was the systems. Um, I don't I don't think it was the game systems that made them successful. Um, I don't I don't know. Maybe on like a micro level, right? Like they were like punishing and long, and both of those kind of encouraged a sense of community and grouping up more than like some of the easier modern ones. But no, I think they serve a purpose, and if done well, they'll still serve the purpose for a modern audience. But if they're trying to win over the hearts and minds of people who have already been there and done that, they just have a much higher bar for what they want out of a game, and it's probably going to be pretty difficult to clear for most people. They're if they've got like bitterness that's gone on for decades about their favorite game going in a bad direction or closing down, then it's going to be really hard to win those people over. But they were the audience, so I think that plays a big factor in it. Mm. But no. Usually the feeling of nostalgia is when you really like something and it's gone now, and you want to recapture what you liked about it. And for everybody, that wasn't the same element. So if it's still there, then they're still going to get the same feeling or a different feeling. But if what made it special is gone, then the game's not going to be good to them anymore. Like there was a big push for no changes because they didn't like the current direction of the game. Uh, so they didn't want the things that drove them away from the game to begin with put in the old version of the game, because it wasn't that they wanted to play a worse version of the game. They wanted to play an, in their minds, better version of it. So I think it's worth giving the newer games coming out the benefit of the doubt, and understanding that there's probably not going to be lightning in the bottle. There's not going to be that one game that you can just completely lose yourself in the way that you could at one point, because you're not in that point in your life anymore. Or at least that's how I feel about it. But it's still exciting when a new MMO comes out, especially since it's more far in between now. There was a while during like the big MMO rush where it felt like a new game was coming out every couple of months and I could barely keep up. And now it's, you hear tale that one will be out maybe in the next couple of years. And so there's like more of a chance to get excited about them when they do. Take care.